Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the 3X Value Growth Podcast. My name is Carrie Sauls. I'm your host for today's show. I'm also a value growth advisor and the author of the best-selling book, Multiply Your Business Value in 3 Steps. I'm coming to you, as always, from New Hampshire, and today's trivia about New Hampshire is something that happened in 1899. The very first motorized ascent of Mount Washington's Auto Road was by a man named Phelan O. Stanley. And that's the Stanley of Stanley Steamer fame. So the original Stanley is the one who was the first one to drive up Mount Washington Auto Road. Who knew? So on today's 3X Value Growth Podcast, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Stephen Shapiro. Welcome, Stephen.
It's great to be here, Carrie. Thanks for having me.
It really is great to have you here. For those of you who don't know Stephen, I want to give you a little bit about his background before we get started. Stephen M. Shapiro is an expert on innovation, the creator of Personality Poker, the author of Best Practices Are Stupid, and a speaker who has presented to audiences in more than 50 countries. He previously led 20,000 person process and innovation practices during a 15-year tenure at Accenture. He's a regular columnist for Inc.com. In 2015, he was inducted into the Speaker Hall of Fame. And in 2017, he was a regular judge and mentor on the TLC innovation reality TV show, Girl Starter. His 6th book, Invisible Solutions, will be published in early 2020. Welcome again, Stephen Shapiro.
Well, thank you for having me here.
It's really delightful to have you here. Today, as you know, we'll try to cover 7 questions in just 7 minutes. And today's topic is how to solve difficult business problems. Are you ready to do that in 7 minutes?
I'm ready.
Great. Here we go. Who's your ideal client, Stephen?
So most of my clients are mid-sized to larger organizations that are struggling to stay competitive. In particular, they're companies where their products or services have become commoditized. There might be new entrants like new technologies that are starting to make them irrelevant, and they're concerned about disruptive technologies that are changing the game in the landscape. So it's basically any company that's struggling to survive and thrive in an age where change is happening all the time.
Well, that's a broad swath of middle market, absolutely. So my second question is, what is the problem that you're specifically trying to solve for these middle market businesses?
So my main focus is growth. How do you help companies grow their business consistently, predictably? And to me, therefore, innovation has to be a process. And so when I'm looking at companies, what I do is I help them figure out where are they focusing their energies? How do they get the greatest value from their innovation efforts? And how do they balance their day-to-day work with their need for future growth? So it's all of those juggling acts that take place in any organization, but mid-sized businesses in particular, I think, struggle the most because they don't have the deep pockets and the unlimited resources that the larger companies have. So it's how do we get the most from our investments?
It's a really good point to highlight for mid-market businesses that this is their reality, and it's okay that that's their reality, but here you come with a solution. So I'm going to get to that in a moment. My third question is, what do you see are the typical symptoms of the problem as the owners are experiencing that, or they're actually talking about? What are the triggers to you that you know that they should know that that's their problem?
Well, I think there's a few different things. There needs to be a recognition that they're having a problem with innovation, and they're having a problem with growth, and they're having a problem with sustaining their path. So that to me is the first thing, is just that awareness. And unfortunately, what happens is the word innovation is used so much inside of organizations, nobody really knows what it means. And so what happens is people are so focused on the word without actually understanding really why do we care. And at the end of the day, it's about how do we grow our organization predictably and repeatedly. So some of the symptoms I see is that tells me that companies aren't focused on innovation the right way is they're asking everybody for their ideas. So most companies, their thought of innovation is it's a suggestion box. It's about idea management. It's about hackathons. And what all these have in common is about the generation of a lot of ideas, brainstorming sessions, lots of ideas. You don't need more ideas. Asking for ideas is actually a bad idea. So that's one of the symptoms that I often see. The other thing which I find is that companies are struggling to deal with the day-to-day realities of their business and balance that with the need to invest in the future. And the reason why they struggle with that is because they don't understand how can we efficiently invest in the future. So my background, I'm actually an engineer. So when I look at innovation, most people tend to think of innovation as the same as creativity, which is about generating lots and lots of ideas, laying on the beach, looking at the clouds and coming up with crazy ideas. And that's not innovation at all. That's creativity maybe, but that's what destroys innovation in most organizations because we're spending so much time and wasting energy on things that don't matter. So we need a laser focus on the most important opportunities inside of an organization.
Well said. Absolutely. I love your distinction between innovation and creativity and highlighting that they aren't synonyms.
True.
My fourth question, therefore, is what are the most common mistakes that you see
of ideas that are generated in brainstorming sessions, that are submitted into suggestion boxes, that are used in hackathons and idea management systems don't create value. So that means that only 0.1% of your ideas, 0.1% of your energy is actually creating value. And so this is why companies are struggling to innovate because they don't have time to invest in that level of wasted energy. So we need to almost flip the entire process on its head. And instead of focusing on ideas and generating a lot of wasted time, we need to focus on important problems. And that to me is really the key.
That's really impressive that it's only 0.1 or 0.01%.
Both of them, sometimes, yes, it's both.
That actually creates value. And if we're not creating value, why are we spinning our wheels? Why are we investing time, effort, and energy? That's a big point to make, definitely. So building on that, what's one valuable free action that our audience members can take or implement that will help them, from your perspective in terms of innovation, to actually increase value in their business?
So when I look at the activities that companies perform, where they're investing their money, no, I'm not talking about the day-to-day production, the things that you're normally doing, but once you start getting into something which is not part of the daily routine, a problem pops up and you need to solve that problem. Or you're investing in the future, you might be investing in new technology, or you might be interested in some of the disruptive technologies like 3D printing or artificial intelligence. Anytime you're making an investment, I want you to just put the pause button on it. Don't stop it, but put the pause button on it and ask yourself a simple question, which is, what is the problem we're really solving? What is the problem we're really solving? Because most of us are running around solving problems that aren't important. Einstein reputedly said, if I had an hour to save the world, I would spend 59 minutes defining the problem, 1 minute finding solutions. Most organizations I find are running around solving problems that are unimportant or they're not well framed. So I have two different litmus tests that I would use when you put that pause button and you ask, what's the problem we're solving? Litmus test number one is it something that helps your organization differentiate? And what I mean by that is if you identify why your customers will do business with you and not someone else, that is your differentiator. That's what makes you distinctive. That's the reason why people are going to keep on coming back to you. And when it comes time to investments, you want to invest as much as possible in those areas. So I always say innovate where you differentiate. Innovate where you differentiate because you can't be the best at everything. If you try to be the best at everything, you'll be the best at nothing. So first, ask yourself, are we really focused on the most important questions? Finally, I want to make sure that we are asking questions that are well framed. And that's that Einstein quote.
And all of that, what I'm hearing is, again, goes back to Einstein, do all the thinking first. But I hear that coming way up front in terms of strategy and planning rather than down in the engineering. Get it clear across the board first.
Absolutely. If you get it right up front, if you're solving the right problem, you're always going to get better solutions. And the problem is we're moving so quickly inside of organizations. If we're asking the wrong question, no matter how much time, money, or energy you throw at the problem, you're never going to get the right answer.
Agreed, completely. My sixth question then is, what's a valuable free resource you can direct people to that will further help solve the problem for them? What's a resource that you can point to on your website?
So I think one of the areas where most companies struggle is in the reframing of the problem. That is, how do we ask a question a different way to get a better result? And I have a tool on my website, on my homepage, where people can download just a little checklist of 21 different ways to reframe a problem. We can reduce the abstraction by asking, what's the leverage point? We can increase the abstraction, which means if it's too specific, how do I make it less so? There's 21 different ways to reframe a problem that will help every organization accelerate their innovation efforts.
Beautiful. What's that web address?
It's steveshapiro.com.
That's easy. And my last question for you is, what's the one question that I didn't ask that would be of great value to our listeners, and also what would be the answer?
Well, I think I want to come back to that Einstein quote real quickly, because it is all about what my next book is about, called Invisible Solutions. And the whole point that I think is important for companies to focus on is recognizing that the best answers, the best solutions are often right in front of your nose, but you can't see it because you're asking the wrong question. You're solving the wrong problem. You're focused on the wrong opportunity. And if we can take the time to actually step back and make sure we're solving the right problems and we're reframing them the right ways, we will get an incredible amount of value. In fact, my clients have measured the results that they get from an idea-driven innovation program, which is all about generating ideas in volume, versus a challenge-centered innovation program, which is about starting with an important question. And consistently, we get a 10-fold or more improvement on our innovation ROI when we start with questions rather than ideas.
Excellent. Really strong point to end on. Thank you so much, Stephen Shapiro, for joining me here on the 3X Value Growth Podcast. It's been such a pleasure to have you and learn so much from you. Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks. The pleasure was all mine.
Thanks for checking out the 3X Value Growth Podcast. If you like what we're doing here, head over to iTunes and subscribe, leave us a review, or rate us. It's very much appreciated. And if you'd like to learn more about the 3X Value Growth model, go to www.3xvaluegrowth.com/model for the PDF.